what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We have a showdown this weekend between the Patriots, who are 3-8, the Dolphins, who are 4-6. We have Phil Perry alongside. We are going to plumb the depths of this matchup, but more importantly, we're going to continue to interrogate the progress of one Drake Maye. And there is going to be a point this weekend where there's a high leverage situation offensively for the Patriots. And you're going to say, you know what? Good time for the Patriots to take advantage of the feet and the arm of Drake Maye and let him make a decision, let him be an athlete. But the Patriots have been loath to have Drake Maye as a designed run practitioner. So Phil Perry on Wednesday asked Gerard Mayo, hey, Gerard, going to start to mix in a couple runs for the kid? Here's what Gerard had to say. It's brought to you by Shaw's, perfecting the art of fresh.
Drake had 8 scrambles against the Titans a few weeks ago, and we've asked you about designed runs for the quarterback, and you said, he's taking enough hits, just scrambling around, and you guys have been okay with that. The scramble numbers have come down the last couple of weeks. I think he's got 7 in the last 2 games. Would you guys reconsider that plan for the designed quarterback run game if he's not scrambling as much?
Look, well, our message to Drake, and we've had multiple conversations about this, is to maintain being a quarterback as long as possible. And that's what we expect. Now, in saying that, absolutely there will be game plan runs at a certain time. We're still evolving as an offense, and I think Drake is continuing to get better. And so we'll put more on his plate.
All right, let's haul the questioner in here right now. It's Phil Perry, the Senator. How are you? Next Pat's podcast is great this week. He's got Devin McCourty. Phil, when would you envision the Patriots needing to use Drake Maye's legs a little bit more with designed runs?
Well, I think the two obvious situations are short yardage and inside the red zone, and specifically even deep in the red zone. We saw this past week there were a couple of short yardage situations that the Patriots weren't able to convert on. There was one very heavily scrutinized 4th and 2 from the 2-yard line.
Yes, sir.
Where they end up kicking a field goal there. That's a perfect time to do it. Now, is the game on the line at that point in the contest, Tom? No, not necessarily, but
it's getting close.
Kind of. I mean, those are the plays that win and lose football games for you. And so to me, they have been so reluctant to use design runs in large part because they know he's going to scramble around enough to generate enough in the way of punishment that they don't want to add any more to his plate. But those numbers, those scramble numbers have come back the last couple of weeks. And so for me, as a result of that, fewer tackles on Drake Maye's body, design a few runs for him and take advantage of that skill set that he has, because those runs can be incredibly, incredibly efficient and effective for your offense.
And also defer to him to not be a knucklehead. I mean, I guess probably the best example of a guy who was unequipped to scramble with any art of protecting himself would be young James Garoppolo. Consistently making bad decisions. Division II player, whatever it's called, FCS, FBS. But he didn't understand the speed of players at the NFL level. And I remember when Kiko Alonso smushed him when he was having a brilliant game against the Miami Dolphins in 2016. And I said, there's no reason he should have been throwing that ball and falling backwards. I've gone far afield already. Let's get back to our guy, Drake Maye. The interesting thing is a comp was made by Hunter Henry when asked in a press conference about whether or not he sees comparisons between the quarterback he had with the Chargers, Justin Herbert, and Drake Maye. And I think that is an excellent comp for Drake Maye right now. Here's Hunter Henry speaking about the two players.
There's a lot of similarities in a lot of ways. They're different, but they're similar in a way too. So, Justin's a special player, but Drake's a very special player too. Both. I think the size always helps. I mean, Drake is a big guy, and Justin obviously is a very big guy. The mobility always helps too. Being able to create plays on the run, not just passing, but also with his feet. There's definitely similarities. I've been blessed to be able to play with, obviously Justin, and then now with Drake.
I like the Herbert comp, but the interesting thing here is he's been surrounded in many instances, Herbert has, by a fairly decent amount of high-end talent, especially at receiver. You had Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, but he hadn't developed. And you did see occasions where offensively they weren't tapping him well enough with Anthony Lynn as the head coach, and then it moved on until you now see he's got Jim Harbaugh, and he's a legitimate MVP candidate. I wonder if that's going to be the arc for Drake Maye. So talk on that. Do you feel as if that's a reasonable comp, more reasonable than, say, Burrow or anybody else?
I do. I think it might even be more reasonable than Josh Allen, as much as
I agree,
those
yes.
comps are apt in some ways. And I've talked to NFL people, coaches that have had to game plan against Drake Maye, and they think they see some Josh Allen in his game just because of how he plays the game. But in terms of body types, he might be a little bit closer to Herbert just because he's a little thinner. He's shorter than Herbert, too, though. Herbert's 6'6", 225. Drake Maye's 6'4", 225. He's not 6'4", 240, which is what Josh Allen is. So I think those comps are fair, not just because of body type, but I think play style and skill set. Justin Herbert's a very accurate quarterback. I don't know if he's as aggressive, and I don't watch him every single week. I don't know if he's as aggressive as Drake Maye. So to me, like, the skill set might be closer to Herbert. The play style and the mentality might be closer to Josh Allen. I
agree, because when you look at so many of the throws that Drake Maye has already made in 5 starts, the occasions in which, and you don't want to fall in love with it, but the rolling left, throwing back right, sidearm, almost 3/4 throws that he has made, those are more Josh Allen. I don't really see a lot of occasions where you find Justin Herbert making those kinds of off. You'll find some, but it's already a staple of what Drake Maye does in a similar way to Allen. But when you talk about stature in the pocket, decisiveness as a runner, and run style, I think there is a greater similarity between Herbert and Maye.
Yeah, and I think there might be some good comps there for the Patriots in terms of how the Chargers use Herbert as a runner. Now, he's not going to lead the league in quarterback carries anytime soon, but they will use him in these critical spots that we're talking about. And I think he's a good example of where the game has gone. There's so many good athletes, maybe not as good as Justin Herbert or as good as Drake Maye, but there are so many athletes who are good enough to be running critical situations. And Tom, it makes it really hard for opposing defenses. And this might be a good time for us to throw to a conversation that I had with Devin McCourty for the Next Pats podcast this week, where he's talking about, as a defensive back, he himself, boy, all the things it makes you think about as a defensive player if you know that the threat of the designed run is there. And it's a little bit different than the off-script scramble run that every quarterback just about in the NFL is now capable of these days too. Here's Devin McCourty talking about just how difficult it can be if you know an opposing offense has that designed quarterback run game thing in its bag.
It takes away the free guy. Like, I was always the free safety. When we played the dynamic guys in the league, call it, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, instead of me being free where I could go double, I could be a robber. Like, I usually was going to be the quarterback player. Even if a DN had the quarterback, it was like, hey, like that's not a good matchup for us. If Lamar Jackson fakes it and he comes out and it's him versus defensive end, it's going to be a touchdown. So you take a player away from everything else with the threat of run. So again, I think they're trying to balance, all right, how much do we put on this kid? How much do we run him? I think they're trying to find that happy medium. I do think personally, when you have quarterbacks who are physical runners, the red zone is the time, to run them. I think we've seen that throughout the league. Guys are running less, call it the Josh Allens, the Jalen Hurts, and those guys, like, they're trying to be smart. They get in the red zone. You could see those guys, their eyes get big. It's like, hey, let's go score a touchdown. You even see that with Jaden Daniels, and, he's not a big guy, but they understand, hey, when we get in the red zone, even if we just do it a time or two for the whole season, it creates this whole other element. So I'm sure they're going to get that. It reminds me a little bit of my brother said talking to Greg Roman with the Chargers earlier this season. He said, like, we're building, guys. Like, we can't implement every single play. So I think things will still come from this New England offense.
Tom, let me hit you with a couple numbers when it comes to just how effective these quarterback runs can be, especially near the goal line. In 2023, the number, or the percentage, of the league's rushing touchdowns credited to quarterbacks, 24%. Quarterbacks had 24% of the league's rushing touchdowns in 2023.
One of every 4.
So, and that was in 2007, that was all the way down to 10%. So it's becoming more and more of a thing year after year.
Does that at all refer to how many of those 24% came as red zone runs?
Not necessarily red zone, but how about inside the 5? I can give you that.
Oh, that's even better, because you're not going to call a design run from the 11 to try and score a touchdown, or the 9.
According to ESPN, in 2023, of the handoffs, the design runs inside the 5-yard line, 1/5 were run by quarterbacks.
Okay.
So you had half of that number, just 10%, run by quarterbacks all the way back in 2007. So again, this is a growing part of the game. I think the Patriots just need to lean into it because it would open other things up for their offense, Tom. And this is an offense, because we know what they're dealing with in terms of talent, that you have to be doing whatever you can to squeeze as much as you can out of this thing. And running Drake Maye, especially if he's taking care of himself in the pocket for the most part during these games now, running Drake Maye would be an easy way for them to get a little bit more out of the overall unit.
Yeah, you want to make Demario Douglas a better player. You want to make Jalen Polk a better player. Figure out a way to have Maye move the pocket. What I don't want to see, ladies and gentlemen, what I do not want to see is that rollout, use half the field and give just that wandering toward the right sideline where it gets sealed up and a linebacker stands there on the goal line, and then it's this narrow throw to the back pylon that you're trying to fit in there. I hate that play. What I don't mind, though, is the all-the-way throw it back across the field like it's John Elway. Just roll him that way and have Vidarian Lowe get his second touchdown by leaking him the other side and just throw a dart all the way across, 54 yards across the field. That's how wide a field is. You guys knew that, though. One interesting thing about the Patriots offense as we, again, interrogate, it's my verb of the day, interrogating the situation with Alex Van Pelt, is sneakily the Patriots have become a fairly competent early game team offensively. Remember how bad they were in 2022 and 2023 out of the gates? It was maddening. I really, just think about it. 17-0 down to the Philadelphia Eagles on opening day, Tom Brady day, with Bill O'Brien back. It was just sickening. They ended up coming back a little bit. But you get what I'm saying. They just couldn't score early. But so far this year, the Patriots, in the last few games, they have scored against Miami, Jacksonville, Jets, Chicago, and the Rams. They've scored first-quarter touchdowns. Only 2 games they did not score first-quarter touchdowns. Excuse me, Chicago was a field goal. Second quarter, they have a touchdown against Houston, a field goal added to the Jacksonville one, field goal against the Tennessee Titans after being held scoreless, and then, of course, both Chicago and L.A., they had 10 and 3 points. So they're starting better. And I asked Drake Maye about that today because it is important to start when you're not a good team. You cannot dig the hole early and become one-dimensional. Here's the reasoning behind why they've done a little bit better early in games, according to Maye.
I think it's credit to AVP and the guys of knowing the first initial calls. I think we studied that hard on Friday and Saturday of knowing, hey, this is the first plays coming out of the ball game, and this is what we're expecting. And I think the guys have really responded well. And I think early on in the year, I think guys kind of lost focus on those, whether first 10 or 15 or 20 plays. And then we had them up on the call sheet, and guys kind of know what they're expecting maybe, or sometimes it doesn't really all come off of the play sheet. But I think the guys have done a good job of studying that up and really focusing on it.
All right, so Phil, as Maye said early on, not as much focus was being expended by the players, he thought, on meticulously getting that stuff right. Now they are. Is this, again, another subtle evolution of the offense under Van Pelt?
I think it is. And I think, we knew coming into the year that the MO of these West Coast offensive coaches was they love their opening game scripts, right? The first 15, you hear them reference that all the time. And so the fact that they've been able to be successful with those first 15, to me, is a good thing. To me, it tells you that Alex Van Pelt and others understand what they're going to see on the defensive side of things when they get out there to start a game. Now, to me, the next step, Tom, would be, okay, the defense maybe gets a little bit of a beat on what you're doing when it comes to those first 15. Can you then build off of those first 15, things that might look like those first 15? The defense thinks they know what you're doing because of those first 15, and now that you're 30, 40, 50 plays into the game, and you're showing them something they think they know, and then giving it a little twist, that to me might help this offense be able to string together more consistent series game to game when you're talking about the full 60 minutes.
A little more news from this week. Cole Strange back in the mix. He started out of practice this week, so it's Christian Barmore last week, Cole Strange this week. You got a second-round pick from 2021 in Barmore. You have a first-round pick from 2022 in Cole Strange. And I know he's taken his knocks and he's had some injury issues, but there's also been occasions in which Cole Strange has been a competent NFL guard. Do you think that this is another indicator between Barmore, between Strange, that this team can continue to improve and become the kind of team that, as Mayo said a few weeks ago, you really don't want to play at the end of the year?
can't hurt, right? I just don't know how much to expect from Cole Strange. He's getting such a late start. Same with Barmore. At least Barmore was out there. He was able to play 21 plays, but he wasn't himself. He wasn't a dominating force by any stretch. And now with Cole Strange, is he playing center or is he playing guard? I would rather have him probably at guard, Tom, just because if he does get in there, because it has been such a late start for him and because he is just coming back, probably want to put him wherever he's most comfortable, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know how much this is going to change the overall outlook for your offense. It might help you actually going into next year. That to me might be the biggest thing of getting Cole Strange back at this point.
What happened to City So?
He's been a little bit banged up. And I think, when it comes to some of the things they've asked this offensive line to do, Michael Jordan just might be the better option. And when I say the things they've asked this offensive line to do, City So to me doesn't strike me as a wide zone run game guy. Now, neither does Michael Jordan, quite frankly. But City So is a duo, downhill, big-bodied, thick, powerful guy. And maybe they start implementing more of that, and maybe he gets out there on the field a little bit more. They have been using him as this jumbo tight end when they've been bringing him out there. But maybe he sees a little bit more time as they get down the stretch here and they realize the gap running stuff is actually way better for us than the zone running stuff. And maybe that's what gets him back into the lineup. It's
really wild when you look at this team and the draft and personnel decisions they've made as they've tried to figure out exactly who they want to be and how they want to approach the game, offensively and defensively. And I did a little exercise after the release of Tyquan Thornton last week, looking at the first round picks from the first 3 rounds since 2015. You ready? We're going to strap in for a second. We're going to do some reciting.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. Your first, second, and third round picks in 2015, Malcolm Brown, Jordan Richard, Geno Grissom. Jordan Richard, a second round pick. 2016.
So bad you lopped off the S on his last name.
2016. Second round pick in 2016, Cyrus Jones, followed by Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney had an AV, which is approximate value of 45 in his time with the Patriots. Malcolm Brown, by contrast, was 29. Jordan Richard was 10. Derek Rivers. Oh, Joe Thuney and Jacoby Brissett. 2017, Derek Rivers was a third-round pick in 2017, as was Antonio Garcia. 2018, you had Isaiah Wynn, Sony Michel, Duke Dawson. AV, approximate value, you can find that on Pro Football Reference. For Isaiah Wynn as a Patriot was 20. Sony Michel was 16. 2019, here's your first, oh my goodness. In 2019, they had 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. N'Keal Harry, Joejuan Williams, Chase Winovich, Damian Harris, Yodny Kajust. You wonder why the team's not good right now. 2020, Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Devin Asiasi, Dalton Keene. My goodness. 2021, Mac Jones, Christian Barmore, Ronnie Perkins. 2022, Cole Strange, Tyquan Thornton, Marcus Jones. 2023, Christian Gonzalez, Keon White, Marte Mapu. Didn't do 2024 because it's a developing situation. My God, no wonder they're 3-8. It's a wonder they got to 3-8.
I just can't get over the angle of the thumb and just how accurate that felt to me in real time. I think you did a really good job with that.
Thank you. For folks who are using the audio portion, I gave a straight thumbs up to many players. And if it wasn't so good, I would tick it over to 10. If it was a pretty good, Marcus Jones got 10 o'clock. I think Mac got 9 o'clock, maybe 8:30. And then we had Ronnie Perkins, for instance, and Duke Dawson. They were all at 6 o'clock. But my God, you can't run a football team that way. All right.
And it does get back to having asked McCourty, who follows this team really closely and still knows a lot of the guys on the team, including the coaching staff, asking him about DeMarcus Covington and the job Covington has done as defensive coordinator. And he says, listen, you don't want to make excuses. It's been up and down, no question about it. But for him, the results have been relatively expected, is the word he used. And it comes back to not only the talent, but the injuries and losing guys for different reasons. And that saps your depth for a team that already wasn't all that deep because of the drafts that you mentioned, and you get what you get.
You get what you get, and you don't get upset. Coming up after the break, Phil and I will get into the Miami Dolphins matchup a little bit and talk about the cornerback deployment against those Dolphins wideouts. Welcome back in, everybody. Tom Curran's Patriots Talk Podcast. Phil Perry alongside. The Patriots play the Dolphins this week, and the Dolphins had been on a skid. They lost to the Colts 16-10. They lost to the Cardinals by 1, the Bills 30-27. Now they've won 2 in a row. They've beaten the Rams 23-15, and then the Raiders, as you may have seen last week, 34-19. So you have a Dolphins offense that has shrugged off the Snoop Huntley era. And since Tua has re-entered the lineup, has scored 27, 27, 23, and 34 points. Of course, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle are the wideouts there. The Patriots last week, they saw 2 good wideouts in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. How did they go after him? Interestingly, in the minds of many. Here's Drake Maye talking about the Patriots' deployment against those two and how it might be impacted this week against Hill and Waddle.
This is a little bit different. You know, you look at last week, it was more about the size matchup. This week, it's about the speed matchup. And, you know, we have guys in the locker room who have covered those guys relatively well. And we just have to continue to do that. I would say when you look at like matchups like that, you know, it's always fun to see a guy travel with the guy. But again, you know, they learn you and you're learning them during the game. And I think there is something to sometimes changing those matchups up just to throw it off.
You hear that quote from Gerard, and it is really hard sometimes as a layperson to divine who's in coverage on a particular spot. And when you are in zone, sometimes you have a guy who's on both zip codes. He's on the border. He might have a foot in each state. So 2 guys are going to be hedging his way. But what did you make of his answer in that regard?
I think he is of the mind against a team like that with a Hall of Fame level quarterback and a couple of really good receivers.
What's he talking about with the bigness? Puka being big?
Oh yeah, Puka and Cooper Kupp are man,
Kupp's big too?
Next to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
No, but I mean next to Marcus Jones.
Certainly next to Marcus Jones. That was, you know, as much as people made the non-usage of Christian Gonzalez against either of those 2 guys, you know, I think you could sort of flip around the
6'2"?
same argument.
I know Cooper Kupp was 6'2". He's only been in the league for 9 years, Tom. Keep up. Sorry.
Well, you could flip that same argument around and say, how is it a good matchup ever to have Marcus Jones on Puka Nacua? Just based on the size differential and the strength differential. And there was one third down included that stands out to me first and foremost, where, you know, Marcus Jones, God bless him, he is one of the hardest playing defensive players that they have, and one of the guys most willing to sacrifice his body. And I think one of the pound for pound, maybe their hardest hitter, just because he will run into you at full speed, and he's maybe the fastest guy on the team. But when he tries to jam Puka Nacua at the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 8, and he gets shoved like Jason Tatum on George Niang.
Nyang.
Is that the right way to say that?
That's the way I kept saying it.
Massachusetts, I should understand.
That's the way I kept saying it last night.
Or Tatum basically throws him 15 feet to hit an open 3. That was essentially what happened to poor Marcus Jones on that particular play. It's just not a good allocation of resources, in my opinion. I think what makes this matchup a little bit better is that you have 3 guys that you might feel okay with on both of their good receivers. Because they're small and fast, we've seen Gonzalez already on Hill and do an okay job last year on Hill. But Jonathan Jones and Marcus
We've seen Jonathan Jones do that too, yeah.
And they're sort of built to play those guys, aren't they? I think that was part of the reason Bill Belichick wanted to draft Marcus Jones in the 3rd round was, hey, they've got 2 really small and fast guys. We need 2 really small and fast guys. We got Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones. There you go.
This offseason, we have spent a ton of time on tackle, wide receiver. There's sneaky other positions that need a lot of addressing, which we will start to explore more and more, especially in the next Pats podcast. But tall corner and edge are coming up hot on the outside.
You think they need another tall corner?
I do. I think that they need another boundary corner. I absolutely do. I think that because you can match them up and say, okay, well, now it's going to be Alex Austin. Who's scared of Alex Austin?
What happened to the old double one guy and single the other guy? The 2014 Patriots mastered this. You have the singular lockdown guy. Just throw a couple bodies at the other guy and figure it out.
It worked so long and so well. But, yeah, I mean, I guess you have that now in Christian Gonzalez. Do you know
what you don't have is Brandon Browner on the other side, who is really good at doing the whole jam at the line of scrimmage. And if you got help over the top,
look at the size of that guy.
Yeah, you're right.
Look at the size
point.
of that.
No, I'm glad we talked through this.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I'm wrong.
You know the Patriots would have taken Keon White in the first round.
Yes, I reported that at the time. Yeah, they were thinking about when they traded down. It was because they looked at Gonzalez and White and they said, "Well, we'll get one of those guys."
They were going to take Keon White in the first round. And I said, "Well, all right, we'll take Gonzalez, but I hope he's there." Anyway, this leads me into one other observation that Phil made this week as we were talking. Devon Godshaw in the locker room the other day said, "Hey, we're a great team. We just got to play a little bit better. We got to play a little more disciplined, finish some games." Sometimes guys are given a hyperbole after they spend too much time in the sun and warm air and play a lot of snaps. They're not a great team. But Drake Maye has, in recent weeks, started to tiptoe around the notion that they're not that bad. Their roster's pretty good. Phil noticed it earlier this week. What was the quote exactly from Gerard on that? Yeah, I'm talking to you.
It was something like, "We have enough talent in the room to win these games."
Right. And I think that that's an acknowledgement that we hadn't necessarily heard quite often from this team about its roster. So if that's the case, they're gaining traction. Do they have enough talent in there now because of the way they're playing that that group has improved, or were they better than they thought?
I don't believe him. So, like, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't. I think he has to say that in some ways because he's the head coach.
I believe you.
And those are his guys. But listen, could they win a number of these games? Yes, they could have. I mean, we could go down the list of all the one-score games that they've lost this year that a couple plays here or there they could have won. But the reason you're losing more of those than not, to me, is due in large part to the talent that you have. And the margin for error is so slim with this team. And so even the good teams, they make mistakes all up and down the game. The Chiefs are making mistakes every single game that are making some of these games nip and tuck for them. But they have the best quarterback in the world, and they have some really good pieces around them. They have some great pieces defensively, and so they're winning.
It's great that you mentioned that. Let's do that for a quick second because it's a podcast. You people have nothing but time. So the Patriots lost last week to the Rams, and we can cite, for instance, you have a second-round pick who has been a disappointment thus far on the field in a pivotal 4th and 1. And why are you running a trick play there? Because you don't have a high-end wideout that you can really say, well, they have to pay attention to that guy. So you have to game something up. That's a for instance.
Or how about like two offensive linemen playing next to each other that you trust to be able to move a body and get a yard or two in that situation.
On third,
in the run game.
Third and goal, when they had to settle for a field goal down low, 25-yard field goal, Hunter Henry missed a block on the third down play. But you know what? The three guys in front of him looked like they were slow dancing with the defensive line. They got no push. No push. And I don't hate their offensive line's performance. I don't love the personnel, but they've not done bad. I don't hate Scott Peters' job. I don't hate the work that he's done.
No, I think they're getting better.
That's the offensive line coach, folks.
In large part because of the quarterback, though. I think he's making them look better than they are, probably, in a lot of ways. You look at a lot of the metrics, Tom, and people that keep track of this stuff league-wide much better than I do. They're still, by a long shot,
the worst offensive line in the league.
Worst offensive
line. Yeah, we just did this on Quick Slants yesterday with our guy Ben Baldwin. He said this is a Drake Maye tweet. Take a look at the Patriots offensive line, run blocking and pass blocking, 32nd behind the Saints, and by a far sight worse than everyone else. But when we look at that game, held hostage perhaps on those fourth down plays by their inability. The Miami game, they lost in overtime, held hostage perhaps by the fact that they have kind of a retread quarterback and Jacoby Brissett trying to pull it out of the fire and throwing to Jalen Polk at the back of the end zone. You like somebody else there. I'm not going to keep doing this.
No, but it's all valid. I just, I think Drake Maye is getting into the stretch of his first season as head coach where he really would like to achieve this goal that he has set for them to be a pain in the ass to play against. And so part of the message now is not, woe was us, look at our roster, we just have no shot. It's, no, we're good enough. We're good enough. Let's see what we can do. And I think maybe that's his public message to make sure that the players know they've got something to play for down the stretch here. Get as much as you can out of these guys and see how it looks.
Patriots at Miami this week. Phil will be going down there. Phil, do you have a read on this game? Would you be stunned and amazed if the Patriots won it? Because I kind of wouldn't. But you still have a Miami team playing for more than just, hey, we want to be better for Mike McDaniel. It's a team that had aspirations. It's a team that's playing well. It's a pretty good challenge for the Patriots and a real good guide after 4 games of what we would call competency as they've gone 2-2. A good gauge of a team in their division with purpose and a reason to play. Can they keep pace?
I think they could keep pace. I think the quarterback, honestly, has been playing well enough to keep them in a lot of these games, and the Dolphins aren't so good that would move me off that spot. One guy that the Patriots are going to have to worry about, though, Tom, old buddy, Jonnu Smith.
I know.
Jonnu Smith is second on the Dolphins, not Jalen Waddle. Second on the Dolphins in receiving yards this year. Waddle's had a down year.
Yep.
And so maybe that helps them keep this game close for the Patriots. But Jonnu Smith, who matches up with? Is it a linebacker? I don't love the linebacker group that's currently constructed. Is it Kyle Duggar, who just came back last week and I thought had a bad game?
Yeah, I think
Missing
that was a
tackles
consensus.
and sort of just a little bit late to the party at times. So, boy, wouldn't that be a hell of a way for this game to play out that Jonnu Smith is the guy who changes it and wins it for the Dolphins? But that's a sneaky, huge mashup for this group. And so I don't think they'll win. I don't think the Patriots will win. Miami's always a tough place for them to play, but I do think they'll keep it close.
Marty, 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 Marty Mapoo, Marty, 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 Marty Mapoo. He's coming to get you, Jonnu. He's coming to get you, Jonnu. That's my prediction. All right, Patriots are going to lose this game. Hot one out there. They lose 34-24. Good game, though. Pretty fun. Make sure you check out the Next Pats podcast. Phil Perry, Devin McCourty, you're going to love that. Also, we appreciate you joining us. I want you to check out pregame live on Saturday. And also, we'll be coming back with postgame live. It's a Celtics game on Sunday in the afternoon. So we're going to have postgame live after the Celtics and Celtics postgame. We're going to be coming up at 7 o'clock. It's not bad, actually, because you can either watch the Celtics, which most of you will, or you can watch your 4 o'clock games. And when all that's done, you jump back in here and you watch postgame live. And, of course, we'll have the aftermath. Unbelievable audiences for the aftermath, too. Thank you so much for joining us after the games, because sometimes it's hard to tie it together. Phil's got to get on a plane or something, and he sticks it. He really powers through. See you, folks.